Hi, everyone. Happy Earth Day and happy Take Your Kid to Work Day. We're so excited to see all of you here today. Here at National Geographic, we believe in the power of exploration and wonder to change the world. At the heart of that mission are our explorers. They are cutting edge scientists and researchers, transformative educators, and powerful storytellers. And today we are super lucky to have one of these explorers with us, Vanessa Bezy. The way this is going to work quickly is Vanessa will speak about her work for about 15 minutes. And then when she's done, we'd love for you to ask any and all questions that you might have. You can go ahead and use the hand raise function, which is at the bottom of your screen. If you have connection issues or you're feeling shy, you can also feel free to type your question in the chat box and we will get to it. I'm going to stop talking now and I'm going to pass it over to my colleague and my friend, Kate Freshwater, who's going to introduce Vanessa, and then she'll also take your questions after Vanessa speaks.
Thanks, Brian. I am Kate Freshwater. I work alongside Brian on the Explorer Programs team, and I am super excited that Vanessa is able to join us today to talk a little bit about her work. Vanessa is a marine biologist and wildlife conservationist based in Costa Rica, working to protect sea turtles at the Ostional National Wildlife Refuge. Vanessa received a grant from National Geographic to support her work with sea turtles, and she also was part of the National Geographic Society's 2019 Early Career Leadership Program. So today, Vanessa will show us turtle cams, drones, and some other very cool technology that she's using to study sea turtle behavior so that she can better protect these amazing creatures. And as Brian said, we'll have plenty of time for questions for Vanessa at the end. So be sure to hold those. And as he said, you can either raise your hand at the end or type them in the chat. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Vanessa.
Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to see so many people joining us from all over. I'm so excited today to share with you some of my work. Before I get started and share all of the cool tools and technology that I'm using, I wanted to give you a really quick introduction to a sea turtle's life, because some of you might not know, what is a sea turtle's life like? So we're going to start today learning about the life cycle of the sea turtle. Sea turtles start their life from an egg, very similar to a chicken egg, except it's actually the size of a ping pong ball and it's round, and it's buried in the sand. And the sea turtles hatch from that egg and make their way instinctively out to the ocean. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. They spend most of their life out in the ocean, and that's why it's so hard for us to study them. And we know very little about that part of their life. And eventually, when the turtles grow up and reach maturity, it takes about 20 or 30 years for them to reach maturity. The males and the females will come back to a coastal area where they mate, and only the females will come back up onto shore to dig a nest and lay their eggs, and the cycle will start all over again. And so just to explain a little bit more about what that's like, these sea turtle eggs, like I said, are the size of a ping pong ball, and they're not like chicken eggs. They're soft and they're leathery and they're buried in the sand. And there's about 100 of them buried in the sand in a single nest. And when those sea turtles hatch, there's sometimes up to 100 hatchlings that hatch all at once. And imagine they're still buried in the sand. They all start to scramble, and that sand slowly falls down underneath them, and they slowly come up of sand. We actually call it hatchling boil because it looks like boiling water as the turtles come out of the sand. And then these sea turtles have to figure out how to get to the beach without their mom to show them their way. And so sea turtles have to use what we call instinct, which is something you don't have to learn. Just like you and me know how to breathe and your mother doesn't have to teach you how to breathe, these sea turtles know exactly how to get down to the ocean, and they use the moonlight reflected on the ocean to guide them. They also go away from shadows. So if there's any trees that create shade, they know to go away from that. And they go down the slope of the beach, similar to how you probably run towards the water when you go to the beach. And the thing is, though, that these sea turtles have a lot of predators and a lot of obstacles on the way to the beach. There are crabs and birds, and And once they get to the water, there's even fish that eat them. And if you can imagine, the sea turtle is about the size of the palm of your hand. So they're very small and they're a bite-sized snack for lots of animals when they're that small. But once they get to the water, if they make it past all of those obstacles, they also have to figure out how to navigate around the ocean without any road signs or GPS to help them find their way. And these sea turtles know exactly how to swim against the waves and towards the ocean currents, all on their own. And once they get into the water, because there's still lots of fish out there, they have to hide from all of the bigger fish. And they do that in these floating algae. And they do that until they reach about the size of a dinner plate. When they get that big, it's a lot less likely that something like a shark or another fish might eat them, and they have a much higher likelihood of survival. But then the sea turtle has to find its way all the way back to the beach from somewhere out in the middle of the ocean. And sea turtles have a special sense. They use the Earth's magnetic field to navigate, very similar to how a GPS machine works, to find their way to the coast. And they also use their eyes and their nose to figure out where the land is that they can go and lay their nest. And this is when finally we close the cycle and the sea turtle will crawl back up onto the beach to lay her eggs. And this whole cycle starts all over again. So that's just a little bit about the crazy life of sea turtles. I wanted to share with you how I study sea turtles. And I work at a very special place in the world. Sea turtles usually nest all on their own. And there are only the 7 species of sea turtles in the world. And of those, only 2 species do what we call mass mating. This is called an arribada. It's the Spanish word for arrival. And it's an event where thousands of sea turtles come to nest all at the same time. It's pretty ridiculous and overwhelming, as you can see from this picture. And this happens at very few sites in the world. And where I work in Costa Rica is one of them. And so we have lots and lots of turtles, but we really don't understand how or why the sea turtles come. And you can see that there's so many that it's even hard to count them. And until I started working here, we'd only ever counted sea turtles on land. And I was really curious to find out, how many sea turtles are there in the water? Are there more? Is it the same? Let's find out. And to do that, in the past, we had to use airplanes and boats and things that can be dangerous and sometimes even expensive. But right when I started doing my research, I heard about this cool thing called a drone that is much less expensive and safer to use. And that is how I started studying sea turtles in the water. So today I'm going to show you, this is my drone. We call this a quadcopter drone because it has 4 different propeller blades. It's kind of like a mini helicopter. And this is very special because it lets the drone take off and land vertically like this, up and down. It doesn't have to take off like a plane. So it's a lot easier for me to move around. And I can maneuver in all kinds of different ways to watch the turtles in the water. Here you can see there's a camera in the front. There's a battery here, which is very important. We have to make sure our drone doesn't die and fall in the water. And it also has these cool sensors on the bottom that tell me how far up off the ground I am. And so with this drone, I went out and flew in straight lines an entire year to count turtles at the beach that I work at. So now I'm going to show you what that looks like. But first, I also wanted to show you the cool little remote control that comes with my drone. It's just a little smartphone, and there's little things here like just like a video game. And these antennas are what communicate with my drone so that I can watch here live, but I also record the footage so that you can see it and then I can count the turtles later. So I'm going to show you the footage. So this is what I was seeing with my camera. All of these tracks you see, those are all sea turtle tracks on the beach. And as you go offshore, you see the waves. And soon here, you're gonna see lots of little dots in the water. And all of those dots are sea turtles. And it's so many that I had to come up with a way to count them. because you'll see that you soon lose count. I've already seen maybe more than 20. I don't know if you can count them all. And so to do this, I had to use more technology to try to figure out how I can calculate how many turtles there are. And so you can see the drone is going at a very specific speed, and that helps me figure out how far we've gone. And then I take this video and I put it in this cool program called Boris. And this program lets me tag the video like you might tag someone on social media or point at them. And it lets me say to the video, this is where I see a turtle every time I hit a T. And this gives me a count of the turtles. The good thing about this program is that when there are too many turtles, I can even slow it down and actually look at it as if they were pictures so that I can count all of the turtles that are there. And I'm counting only the sea turtles that are at the surface, because that is what this drone can see. We can't see below the surface. So we're counting all of the turtles at the surface to see the density, or how many turtles there are over a certain area. But I was very curious just how far this mass of sea turtles reached in the water. And so one day when I went out and saw that there were so many turtles, I decided to go up as high as I could with the drone to zoom out and see over how much area this group of sea turtles covered. And you can see here, as my drone is slowly going higher and higher, there were more and more and many more sea turtles over a very large area. And what we saw is that this is the highest density, again, or the number of turtles over a small area that we've ever seen in a scientific study. So this is really a special place on Earth where there's lots and lots of sea turtles. And remember, sea turtles are endangered, so usually we don't see this many. And this was very important for us to see that this place is very special for sea turtles that are coming to mate and sea turtles that are coming to nest. So here you can see just how far these turtles went. We actually had over 100 turtles per square kilometer. And this little town that you see right there is the town of Ostional, after which the refuge is named. So you can see the turtles are very close to land. And so, because I saw so many turtles, but remember, I was just looking at the sea turtles on the surface. Like any good scientist, my next question was, well, if there's this many sea turtles on the surface, how long do they dive, and how many more sea turtles are there below the surface? And this was a big challenge because I needed to get in the water and figure out how long a turtle dives to figure out just how many of those turtles we're seeing at the surface and how many more might be below the surface. So to do that, I used what's called, I call a turtle cam. It's a small underwater camera that is attached to an extra battery pack. Here we have a plastic hollow tube, and I chopped up a marine buoy and stuck it on here to create a float. And this camera, when it comes off of the sea turtle, it will float up like this. And this is a flag, but it's actually also a transmitter. It's a radio transmitter that will create a little beeping sound that I can find the camera when it comes off of the turtle. And so this is a camera that we attach to a sea turtle so that we can watch its behavior and not just learn about how it dives, which you can do in many other ways, but also see how it's interacting with other turtles. Before I show you how we did that, just so you know what you're seeing, I'm going to show you how we attach it to the turtle. We temporarily glue a little piece of mesh to the turtle's carapace, or its back, the shell on its back. And when we glue this there, I attach, that will fall off in a little bit once the turtle grows. And then I attach this little link. This is a link that they use for fishing usually. When you put this in seawater, it starts to dissolve and eventually it breaks apart. And so I know that this is going to take 4 hours to break apart. We attach this here and we bungee cord the camera to the turtle's back. And then after 4 hours, it pops off and we have to go find the camera. So really quick, I'm going to show you what that looks like. You can see my snorkel face here. And this is a sea turtle that has the turtle cam attached to its back. We put a towel on its face to keep it from getting too stressed out while it's on the boat. And the turtle's ready to be released. So my assistants, Carlos and Renato, are going to release the turtle. I'm going to watch it from the water here so you can see. And so this turtle spent maybe just about 15 minutes on the boat after we captured it and safely put it on the boat so we could stick the camera on. And there she goes. So now that we've released the turtle, our job is to wait for the camera to come off. And then we have to go looking for the camera using that antenna I told you about. And so we have on our ends a different antenna attached to a receiver. And that with a headphone, you can hear a little beep, and the beep gets louder the closest you get to the camera. And unfortunately, I'm working in the Pacific Ocean. People who originally designed the camera are doing work in Australia, where the water is very calm. And here we have strong currents. And so all of these tiny little cameras, we were only finding about 1 out of every 2. And so it was very, very difficult to find the cameras. But when we found them, we got some very interesting footage and we learned a lot about sea turtles. So now I'm going to show you what it looks like when we get this footage back. And this is a turtle. You can see it has a flipper tag from when we caught it so that we can identify it if we find it again. And what we realized from this footage is that the sea turtle's life was actually a little boring. They spend very little time at the surface to take a couple of breaths, and then they take these very long dives and spend most of their time at the bottom of the sea resting. And so you'll see here, most of our footage gets very dark and green. Sometimes it's completely black and you can't see anything. And these sea turtles are essentially, it seems, napping all day and resting until they get ready to nest. And what we saw is that they're actually only spending about 20% of their time up on the surface, which is a very small amount. So we might have as many as 5 times more turtles than what we see in that video if they're all diving the same way. And so you can see here, the video is going to get dark soon. And as I mentioned, the footage wasn't as exciting as we were hoping. These turtles are taking sometimes like a 20-minute long nap before they come back up to take a breath. So they can hold their breath even longer than that if they'd like to, but that's more or less what we've seen. And so with that, I wanted to share with you our next step, because as any good scientist, there's always another question. And so after we realized it was so difficult to use these cameras to learn about sea turtles, we realized we really needed a camera that we weren't going to lose. And so that is where my underwater drone comes in. This is like a submarine. It's a remotely operated vehicle, we call it. And it's an underwater version of my drone. It is a watertight little machine that has some lights here in the front. There's a camera here, and there are different propeller blades. So this propeller blade helps it go up and down in the water, and these help it go forwards and backwards. And this little drone connects to a very long cable that then comes to the top of the boat, where it can be linked with my little remote control so that we can control the drone and hopefully follow sea turtles around to learn more about their behavior and also learn more about what we have here in our oceans. And just so that you know what that looks like, I'll share with you some video that we've seen just from us swimming in the water when we're trying to catch turtles to put turtle cams on them. The turtles are actually very curious. This species isn't very scared of humans. And so you'll see they come quite close. The problem is the sea turtle isn't behaving how it normally would. It's coming because there's a big human in the water invading its space. And so we hope that with the drone, maybe the sea turtles will get a little bit used to the machine being in the water, and we can see more how they behave normally when they're in the water and figure out just how long they dive and just how many sea turtles there really are here in Ostional. And that's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Vanessa. I loved learning about all the technology that you're using and seeing a day in the life of the sea turtle. That was really awesome. And I see a lot of clapping hands up here. So thank you. Now I'm going to open it up to questions. So either drop your question in the chat, or you can use the raise your hand feature at the bottom. But while everyone is thinking of their question, I have a question for you, Vanessa. Can you tell us what was your favorite subject in school, and when did you know what you wanted to be when you grow up?
Well, my favorite subject was science, unsurprisingly. But at first I was interested in writing stories and illustrating books for children. And then one day I found out there was such a thing as being a marine biologist, which meant I would get to be outside and in the ocean. And I never really liked being inside in front of the computer, although I still have to do that sometimes. And so when I was very young, actually, I was 7 years old, and I watched a show called The Voyage of the I decided to be biologist ever since.
Awesome.
I have a
Oh, do
question.
we have another question? Okay, go ahead.
Do the sea turtles mate forever, and where do the parents go?
That's a great question. Sea turtles don't mate forever. They actually mate with different females and different males. And it's a very important strategy for them as a species because there's so few of them that if they were only going to mate with one their whole life, then we'd really be in trouble. And when the males aren't near shore waiting for the females, they are off on their own, looking for food and living their life out in the open ocean. But both the males and the females will come back and meet up on the coast near their home beach.
Okay, any other audience questions? Do you have a follow-up?
I have more questions.
Okay, go for it.
Wait, I forgot.
Why are sea turtles endangered?
Oh, that's a very important question. Thank you for asking. Sea turtles are endangered for a lot of different reasons. One of the biggest reasons is that they spend most of their time in the ocean, and there's a lot of very big fishing boats and nets and plastic and all kinds of threats out there that make it very hard for a sea turtle that has to travel so far across the ocean to survive. The other big threat to sea turtles is also lights on the beach. So you've probably maybe visited a beach where some people use lights at night, and those bright white lights can scare turtles away from the beach. And it can also confuse the hatchlings. Remember, if they're using the light from the moon, they might start going towards a street light if there's other lights that aren't natural. And so a lot of this coastal development, and also having less trees on the beach to shade the nests, plastic pollution as well, and especially also climate change, because sea turtle eggs can actually get too hot and not survive. And the sea turtle's sex is determined by the temperature of the nest. So an egg that that hatches in a cooler environment is a male, and an egg that hatches in a warmer environment becomes a female. And so with all of these hot temperatures, we're getting lots and lots of females, but there's no more daddy turtles out there.
How could the turtles hold their breath so long?
They can hold their breath so long because they have very special adaptations to do so. You've probably noticed, they breathe air like you and me, but they have a very slow metabolism. So turtles are able to hold their breath longer because their whole body is slower and allows them to keep that oxygen longer than you and me.
Okay, I see a question from Sarah Davidson's kids. They want to know, what can they do to help the sea turtles?
Thank you for asking. The most important thing to help sea turtles is to protect the ocean as a whole. And that's very important. There's many different ways you can do that. And the easiest way from home to do that is to make sure that you have as little impact environment as possible. Even if you don't live near the ocean, any of the trash that you create, if it's not properly disposed of, it might wash into the ocean. You can also make sure that you're eating sustainable seafood. If you eat seafood, make sure that it doesn't come from a boat that had a very big net and that may have destroyed everything around it just to catch that one fish. Always pick up trash, even if it's not yours. That's very, very important. And you can also teach everyone else about sea turtles. A lot of people don't know about them. And the more you understand sea turtles, the more you can understand how you can impact them, especially when you go to the beach, to make sure that you're not making it harder for them to find a place to nest and for those baby turtles to make it back to the sea.
Okay, I have another question now from Beth. She would like to know, do you name the turtles?
That's a really good question. I usually don't name the turtles. There's so many here that I would run out of names. I've worked with a lot of people that do volunteers that we would just go through the whole alphabet and start all over again because we ran out of names. There were too many turtles.
Brian, do you have a question? I see your hands up.
Yeah. Vanessa, do you have any funny fieldwork stories working with turtles? I'm thinking of one that you've shared on the beach.
I do. Oh, it's my favorite. Yeah, I don't think very many people have similar stories. So this one time I was working on the beach very late at night, and when these turtles come to nest, there's thousands of them, and it's sometimes for an entire week that I hardly sleep because they nest. And so one night at the beach waiting for a group of volunteers to come help me, and I was all alone on the beach with turtles all over me, but I was very tired and I wanted to take a rest. So I found a log to sit on because there was nowhere else to sit on the beach. And I think I dozed off because at one point I was getting climbed on top of by a sea turtle who was looking for a spot to nest. And so I had to kindly move her to the side so she could find a place to nest. But very few people can say they've been trampled by turtles, but I certainly have.
Awesome. Okay, we have, it looks like N. Davis has a hand up. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes. My question is, how does sea turtles get their food?
Oh, that's a good one.
Sea turtles get their food.
When they eat on land, they look kind of slow, but in the water, they're very fast. So sea turtles swim after their food. Some sea turtles actually eat food that is like in the sand. So they dig for their food with their beak. Other turtles eat coral and sponges. And so they just eat straight off of the reef. But some turtles eat jellyfish and fish. So they have to swim after them and catch it with their mouth.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions? Oh, Brian has another question. Go ahead,
I have
Brian.
another one. I'm blown away by all of this turtle cam stuff, but do you have any like fun facts about sea turtles that you didn't share in your presentation?
Well, I very deep. Some of these turtles are diving over 120 meters deep. They can hold their breath for very long. They can travel thousands of miles across the ocean and then come back and nest sometimes within the same 1 kilometer of beach. So I don't know about you, but I can't find my way like that. So I think that the biggest thing with sea turtles that's surprising and exciting is how far they travel and how good they are at going back to the exact same spot.
Okay, we have another question from Sarah Davidson. What time of year do sea turtles lay their eggs?
That is a great question. It all depends on the species and where you are. So for example, if you're on the East Coast of the US, the turtles there usually nest in the summertime when the water is warmer. So usually, sometimes they even start in April all the way through hurricane seasons into September. Where I live, they nest year round because it's tropical here and the water's always warm and there's always food. But most sea turtles have a season. So part of the other part of the year, they will be out in the ocean wherever they can find food.
Okay, we have a question from Roberto. How many years can sea turtles live?
Good one. I was waiting for that one. This is a very good question that we don't really know the answer to. We know that it's probably 100 years, maybe even more. It's very hard to tell a sea turtle's age. So if you can imagine, you've probably learned how many years old a tree is. The trees have rings, seasons, and so you can tell that a tree lived a certain number of years. It's similar with sea turtles in their bones, but there's not regular seasons really in the ocean. And so it's a lot harder for us to tell how many years this turtle has lived. And so that's something that we're still working on figuring out.
Okay, now next we have a question from Charisse. Where are sea turtles found around the world? And are there some areas where there are more sea turtles than others?
Definitely. There are sea turtles more or less around the world, but usually just in areas where the water is warm. So right around the tropics. We've seen sea turtles as far north, for example, as like the northeast of the US. But in general, they're right around kind of the middle latitude in areas where it's which is the biggest turtle, will go a little bit farther north and into colder waters.
All right, any more questions for Vanessa?
I have another one.
Ahead,
what's your favorite part about working with sea turtles?
For me, it's definitely being out on the water. I don't get to do it as often, but I really love seeing them in the water in their element. It's cool to see them nest, and obviously I see that a lot. But for me, it's really neat to see just how well adapted they are and how amazing they are at swimming, and they're just so much more graceful in the water. So that's my favorite.
Okay, we have another question from Roberto. How far can sea turtles swim?
Oh, wow. Well, thousands of miles. I'm not sure how far the farthest turtle has been tracked, but if it's hard for you to know how far thousands of miles is, all the way across the Pacific Ocean. So they could swim that entire distance easily, and they probably do it many times in their lifetime.
Wow. Okay, it looks like Sarah Davidson has her hand up, and I see, are you guys ready to go off mute and ask your question?
Go ahead.
What if a jellyfish gets picked off out of the ocean?
A jelly, you mean sea turtle?
Jellyfish.
What? We're not talking about jellyfish.
Did you have a question?
Yeah.
We had a follow-up question to that too. What's your question? Okay. Okay, tell me. Oh, how many kinds of sea turtles are there?
Great question.
There are 7 different types of sea turtles, and they're all very different. So the first one is the leatherback sea turtle. It's the most endangered and it's the biggest. It can be the size of a small car. Imagine that. And that is the one I told you that can dive the deepest. It probably swims the farthest, and it even goes into cold water sometimes. The other one, the next kind of bigger one, is the Loggerhead Sea Turtle. And this one is called the Loggerhead because it has such a big head. Green sea turtle is named the green sea turtle turtles, and actually it's that way because it eats mostly plants. And then we also have the hawksbill turtle, which is one that has a hawk-like looking bill, or kind of a beak in the front of its face, and it uses that to eat sponges off of coral reefs. And then we have the two Ridley turtles. We have the Kemp's Ridley, which is the smallest of the turtles, the Olive's Ridley, which is the one you saw, and we also have the flatback turtle, which is only in Australia. So 7 different species in the world.
Vanessa, how many have you seen out of the 7?
I think I have seen all at one stage in their life, except for the flatback, because I've never been to Australia. But my goal is to see all of them, male, female, hatchling, adult, on the beach in the water.
Very cool. Okay, Nicole and Ben Perkins, do you have a question? Can you take yourself off mute and ask?
Go ahead, what is it? What's the closest living relative? What's the closest relative to sea turtle
in the animal kingdom?
Oh wow, no one's ever asked me that. I mean, I guess some other type of tortoise, likely on lands. So if you've ever had like a pet turtle or found a turtle in your yard, that's probably the closest thing.
Good question, Ben.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Brian has another question.
I have another one. I'm curious. How many eggs do sea turtles typically lay at once?
They lay on average, it depends a little on the species, but it's usually between 70 and 100 or 120 eggs even.
Whoa.
Wow. All right. Last call for questions. Vanessa, I actually have one more question for you as well. Can you tell us, I know every day is different for you, but can you give us an idea of what your day is like when you're out in the field?
Yes. So on days when I have to go out into the field, depends a little bit on the work, but usually I start my day getting ready, getting lots of gear prepared, making sure batteries are charged, everything. Driving somewhere, if we're going on a boat, getting everything onto the boat again, checking everything's good to go. And then when we're out in the water, usually we get out there pretty early and we start looking for turtles. And if, for example, for the turtle cam, then I've got to be getting in the water and swimming lots to safely capture the turtles and get them on the boat. And we can spend sometimes up to, 5-6 hours out on the water. So it's pretty tiring. I come back and I usually fall asleep before I even start looking at the videos and the data of everything. But that's a typical field day for when you go out on the water.
That sounds like a great day. Okay, well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions, but I'm going to ask everyone to unmute if you can, so we can all say a big thank you on the count of 3 to Vanessa for teaching us about her work and about sea turtles. So is everyone ready to go off mute? And I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you, everyone, for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Kids, let's get happy Earth Day.
Take your kid to work day.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vanessa.
That was so